Okay, I think we are live. Welcome. Welcome to the thing. What are we talking about? Oh, yeah, we're talking about duality and perceiving correctly. So, believe it or not, uh, we are not able to see properly, generally. It's really interesting. Um, but so today I wanted to talk about this because it's something that's typically not totally grasped fully by people. um, as we awaken, we sort of recognize cognitively oneness or peace, and then we see the oppression of that peace or love, and we see an enemy, an oppressor, a resistor. We see the ego, and we perceive an enemy. We perceive, adversary. There's a force against us, and this is what we want to try and correct because the ego is not a force, or it specifically is a force. If you would like to learn more about the difference between power and force, I would recommend Dr. David Hawkins' Power versus Force. It's a good place to start with that. This is essentially understanding the difference between truth and falsehood. But there is essentially a layering of reality here that is what we see as evidentially true. Like subjectively, we see that this seemed to occur. Like he went over there, did this thing to her, and I'm observing it. Right? It seems true. But that layer of truth is at the dualistic layer. It's duality truth. In actual truth, which is just the higher frequency of truth, consciousness was, and forms of consciousness interplayed with itself to create some type of observation for itself, between itself and you as observer itself. This is weird, right? It's weird. And if we try to actually live from that place, it's even weirder because nothing anyone's doing makes any sense. Um, so it becomes this conundrum. It becomes this paradox of like, we're all one, but like I'm talking to people, like we're doing things together. So how can I even navigate this reality properly, especially when so many forces seem to oppress the love I want to offer or seem to oppress my beliefs, which essentially to me represent the love I want to offer. So, like, you'll see people making fun of people who believe in aliens or something. And I don't like the word aliens, but, extraterrestrials, let's just say, light beings, whatever we call them. It's very strange that humans would believe in angels, but not like a light being, as if they're somehow different. Like, as if somehow these angelic beings that we've seen, that people have written about, coming down from the heavens and are somehow different. It's very interesting. But this is the opposition, the opponent that we seem to have. It's really just our mind, it's our collective and our individual mind, the ego. That's why I refer to it as the ego. The ego is constructed of illusion. That's what it is. And we have like basically healthy and then unhealthy type egoic interactivity. And the only real way that we discern is that unhealthy egoic activity is going to help us feel bad. It's going to aid us in feeling worse about things. And so correcting our perception, because like I said, there is a way to perceive properly. And the only way to I guess before I get into all of the things that I wanted to talk about, which I'll talk about these things and then we'll jump to Q&A and we'll get into whatever comes up. But we'll get through these things first and then we'll go into sort of freestyle stuff. So feel free to leave comments. I've hidden the chat for now just so I can get through the things and then I'll pop back in. So, feel free. But first of all, we want to recommend all of us do these things. We want to recommend that we notice. All of us are doing this. To even have a conversation at all with another being, we have to put on a skin of ego of some kind, right? We have to. Otherwise, there's no one to do. There's nothing to do. There's no personality to do anything. So ego has to be understood as this necessary costume in this density of consciousness. We have to have some type of beingness here at some form. Otherwise, we will not be here. We will leave. We'll disperse into light. We'll go. However that looks and manifests. And I'm not saying the human chooses to leave. I'm saying the soul itself is done, has no more persona it wants to play, no more story it wants to involve itself in. Therefore, it's all done and it will leave. This is actually not that typical at this stage of evolution. Most souls here want to stay and finish out whatever it is that's in their heart to play out. But in order to do that in a comfortable way, we have to understand that we're navigating a reality that we see that is entirely backwards. It's absolutely, completely backwards. And it's by noticing that it's completely backwards that we can find some peace by essentially correcting our perception. So in order to follow along with what I'm offering, all we really have to agree on is God is power, God is love, God is peace. When I say God is power, the power of God is peace and love, unconditional love. This is what God is. So, if God is that, and there's no moment but now, and we can't see that in the moment, we have to accept, oh, in this moment, I'm insane. I can't see God. I'm seeing something else. And it's okay. It's okay. But that is what's happening. I'm seeing some other thing. I'm thinking I need a sandwich. And I'm thinking I'm so starving and it's actually hurting my stomach, or, these things are not of God's truth, which is why Jesus would always say, drink of my life. What he's talking about is drinking of the highest consciousness available to the entity here to sustain itself that way. Like, you don't eat bread to feed you. You eat of his life to feed you. So even the bread is representative of that life and light made into form that we trick ourselves into thinking sustains us. And that sounds wacky. That sounds totally wacky, but that is the truth of it. The truth of it is that we're so invested into the body that we have to eat in that way. Later, we won't eat. We'll basically drink waters, soups maybe. We're not going to eat much as beings. This is probably going to take 100 years or something. But what I'm saying is, the truth of the matter is that we don't need these things. The ego is what creates all of that. And this is like a higher teaching. It's a more challenging teaching to grasp for people. It's also uncomfortable because we're saying that, wow, I'm actually super confused. And that's the point of it. The point of it is to essentially notice, wow, the human is actually, like, the human self, the human identity self is absolutely insane. Does not know really anything that's going on, does not really comprehend things, but is able to turn to the truth of God and find peace there. That's what we're really learning to establish a foothold and foundation of, which solidifies a non-dualistic observation of reality that is clearly dualistic. We're in a place that is, like I said in one of the other streams, a house of mirrors or hall of mirrors. We're seeing ourselves in everything all over the place, and we want to stop investing so much in that belief. Even though we're observing all of our other selves doing all of these things, we're not necessarily observing parts of ourselves that we resonate with, right? we're seeing a criminal or some type of leader do a thing, Bill Gates buying all the farmland or something, and we're like, this is just wrong. This just feels wrong, seems wrong for a billionaire to do this when people are freaked out as well. Like, it just seems wrong. And I feel the same way. It just seems weird and wrong. I don't know anything about this person. But it seems weird to do that. And we see these types of things, and then we're like, well, what the hell's going on? And we eventually start to notice the ego like makes all of this stuff up. It makes up all of this separation stuff. And there's a layering of it that like is relevant to us. Like, we still need to eat. Even though eating technically isn't totally necessary, we do seem to have to eat still. So it's this balancing act of perceiving correctly, but also understanding we're still here. We're still rooted in the illusion. And especially those of us that have had the Kundalini awakening and felt that energy come up the spine, shoot through these chakras here and explode or culminate in the crown. Maybe we were, kind of had to sit still for a while, or we shook a lot. Maybe we had the blissed out experience and became what I liked. I heard Michael Murdad called them bliss bunnies once. But that's kind of what we get like sometimes after a Kundalini awakening. We have like a oneness with God. That is how God sees. That if you can remember that state, that's how God sees. God sees just a oneness with all things, life and beautiful living consciousness everywhere. Whatever men and women are doing is just not really relevant to the experience. It's just it's not really a thing. That is the truth of true perception. That's seeing correctly. This seems like really affronting to the ego. It seems really confusing and upsetting, actually, but there's so much here that is gross. There's so many terrible things here. So how could that make any sense? And that's what I'm trying to help us step out of. Like, the atrocious things that we see are not of God. That's of ego. It's of man or woman. Like, it's us creating and distorting something pure into something else. And we essentially get to a place where we're trying to get to a place of noticing that illusion is illusion is illusion. Like, and insanity is insane. Separation is what I would call the definition of insanity. It's insane. So can you really get a foundational understanding of insanity? Truly? Like, are you going to get it? Are you going to totally get why all of that's going on? Or is it possible that why all that's going on is a little bit irrelevant because it's all insane? And let's go to the core of it, which is that, oh, I get it. They think they're separate beings, so they're hurting each other. That's what beings that think they're separate will do. It's what animals do to each other, and, it's what humans who are half animal do to themselves. Until they wake up to the oneness and stop. And so we all do this, like, to varying degrees because we're perceiving incorrectly. And this causes us to have situations like where we really want to connect with people and we love people, but they don't seem to be able to offer vibrations that we're interested in as well. They don't seem to be able to hang with us or vibe with us properly because they're into like weird stuff, or they're like giving sort of fake conversations, or, that type of thing. Probably what we're dealing with is like various traumas of the society. Like, we are resenting a lot of the programming, and we notice the inauthenticity or the lack of authenticity in so many social engagements. It's all very backwards. And instead of saying to people, hello, my name's Sean, nice to meet you, what's your name, how are you, tell me about yourself so I can understand you a little bit. Instead of creating conversations this way, it's more just like, I'm so-and-so and I think this, and I think this really, really strongly. That's almost where most of us often approach each other from. And then even on social media, we do that. It's kind of like people all standing on the outsides of their homes, just shouting into the street, I support Black Lives! Right, like this, and I'm not against any of it. I'm just saying people, it's a very virtue signaling type behavior, it's very irrelevant in many ways. And I do this too. So what we want to notice is whenever we're even expressing anything at all, we're ourselves speaking to ourselves. Believe it or not, no matter who we think we're talking to, we're just talking to ourselves or God. And that makes us go, well, I kind of thought God was maybe in some of the conversations. Maybe God was there when I was praying. No. We are claiming ourselves all the time. We're informing the universe of our beingness. We're teaching, in fact, the universe what we are by being it. So what we say we are isn't super important. What we show up as and behave as is really what sets, or what is more relevant to what we are, what we claim ourselves as. And we can claim ourselves as anything. So if I just before the stream, I saw someone on Facebook complaining about how spirituality was tricked away from people and people were tricked into believing all these things. No, ignorant people believed in ignorant information. And whose fault is that? Like, is there not an individual responsibility to say, well, we knew God, and then all these religions started to pop up, and they convinced us to stop, is really what happened here. People convinced you as a soul to stop believing in the more true God. And they convinced us because we let them, right? Like, we want to take responsibility for our opinions, our beliefs, we chose this. We chose to lie to ourselves about all of these things together. There is no separation here. There is no like other force that's like, there are other entities doing all these weird things, of course, but it's all the same thing of consciousness playing itself out. And so correct perception really is just observing the truth, love, and peace of God. That's when we know our perception's correct. Otherwise, our senses are lying to us. Our senses are telling us a thing is happening, and we are telling ourselves it's bad because we have an opinion about it, which means we're judging reality, which means we're judging God and ourselves. And this feels bad. It's why it feels bad. It's sort of like immediate karma in a way. It's like, hey, the higher self is literally saying, hey, this feeling's not true. So that's why it's bad. So it's not true. And people don't really like that because we tend to want to use our feelings and emotionality as like our compasses, but we're misunderstanding how to use that compass. Generally, not everybody, of course, but generally we're misunderstanding the compass and we're applying our positionality and emotional opinion onto something else. So for example, like we have both positive judgment and then negative judgment, which is all judgment. It's all the same thing. So we might say, I really like this man because he's very smart. And of course, this is a shallow kind of example, but it's just to highlight it. I like this man because he's very smart. What we're saying is we don't like men who are not smart. We're also saying that because of our languaging and the way that we form our understanding with each other, we're saying both of those things simultaneously because of the language's duality. So we're saying, I really like him because he's smart, instead of just saying, I really like him. I really like him because he is. Like, because he's here with me. We can see that that's a higher form of love, right? Like, that's much more true. It's much more pure, right? It has nothing to do with what he's brought to me. It has to do with that he's here in front of me as a son of God. And then the negative could be like something like, I don't like him because he's arrogant. So one person enjoys your intelligence and another person enjoys calling you arrogant. Neither one of these things are true, and they're just judgments of things. One seems nice. It seems ostensibly nice, but it's also saying the opposite. It's saying that if you're not, if you know, if you have a moment of stupidity, I'm not really going to like that. So be forewarned. It's kind of saying those things too. And the most of these things are subtle and unconscious, and the ego is doing it outside of the awareness of the being. Like, they're not usually typically trying to say these things, but because of the nature of language and the multidimensional layerings of consciousness, they don't know what they're saying. So that's, we go back to Jesus, like, forgive them, Father, they know not what they do. We know not what we do, basically, until we do. Until we can with confidence say, no, I'm seeing the truth of God, like, all day, every day, forever. That's a big statement, right? I'm certainly not there yet. Certainly not there yet. But that's why we talk about these things and try to do it so open and transparently. Because when we can do that, that's where the permanent peace, that's where, like, enlightenment, the real fruit that we're all seeking, I think, the peace of there is no issue, is from this transition out of the dualistic lens into the unified lens, into the single eye. So let thine eye be single. Let thine eye see only true. And you see the celebrities covering up their eyes. That's what they're doing. They're showing us that. It's hilarious. And people think it's creepy and spooky. Look what they control. Oh, no. I mean, yes, but no. Right? It's meant to be a spooky mystery, I think. And there are certainly wacky things happening in Hollywood. So, that out of the way, what is all of that about? Hollywood really is the imagination center of our being as a sphere. We've sort of decided that's where we're going to make dreams happen, and we've put them into movies, nightmares as well, right? That's more or less what we've done. And because we've idolized all of these people as gods, they all see themselves as gods in many ways, because why wouldn't they? We have uplifted them to godlike status with our admiration and idolatry and worship of them. So of course they're going to see themselves as gods. And you know, when a human sees himself or herself as a god among men, they tend to do weird shit. That's and then we blame them for doing what we worship them for. Like, we worship them for being so confident and powerful. And then they are too confident and powerful, and then we go, oh my God, not like that though. That's what happens with power and pride. And that's what it means with pride goeth before the fall. It's, but then there are, groups that are releasing weird celebrity names. Here are all the list of names that are dealing with this dark thing, and some of those just are not true. Like, I just looked at the names and some of them are not true. So someone's making shit up. And it's not surprising. That's what humans do. They just make shit up so much. It's like unbelievable. It's unbelievable how much stuff the ego makes up. So when we want to perceive correctly, we're noticing that every single thing that I'm even observing is not what I think it is. It's not what I think it is. It's not, none of this, even the thoughts I'm having are not what I think they mean. They don't mean what I think they mean. Like, I'm crazy. Is kind of what we're trying to notice about our own ego nature. And then try to be calm and smiley about it if we can. Isn't it funny? Isn't it funny, that uh so I'm trying to think of something that happened to me. Oh, I think I opened a door right into my own forehead not too long ago. Just I opened the door straight into my forehead. Like and it was shocking. It was painful. It was embarrassing. I think I did it in front of my kids or something. Uh but isn't that hilarious? That this infinite being, spirit, soul, I am a teacher of spirituality. And I smash my face with a door because I'm like unconscious, basically. Just unconscious, not really paying attention. That's what happens when we do that. We're unconscious. It's literally spirit usually trying to say, hey, you're not paying any attention to anything at all. You're like some other place. You're not here. That's usually what's happening when we have those experiences. We stub our toe and things like that. It's like reminder, like, hey, watch what you're doing. Like, watch what you're doing, right? And we can laugh at all of this. It's all very funny. It's all very comical. It can be, at least. The problem is that we see a lot of weirder stuff in the external world, and then we think that that's like real. It's not real. It's people making things up, playing in weird things with each other, doing weird stuff. And this can sound like a rose-colored glasses situation where we're like saying don't look at certain types of things. No. It's that when the perception gets corrected, these things are not observable anymore, really, the way that they were. The darkness shadow part of it isn't really real anymore. It's the shadow cast by the burning light. And one simply knows the light is what is real, and the shadow cast is a natural occurrence of consciousness itself. And, if you were to wander into a tribe of monkeys, and maybe one or two of the monkeys are like trying to sign with you and trying to make communication with you, but the rest of them are like throwing poop around and like being weird, like being monkeys, right? It would make sense that the rest of the monkeys are like still not really trying to communicate with you, but you got these two, or, like they're being in their nature to be the people, is what I'm trying to say. The people always act in their nature. The best way, like a really good way to really anchor this in is reading the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna's talking about how, a warrior's job is to fight. Like, that's what a warrior does. So if we're a warrior, then we're going to fight. But then Jesus says, to live by the sword is to die by the sword. Like, a warrior's going to fight until something kills him. A warrior has an enemy to fight. And so we have people talking about being spiritual warriors. And what I'm trying to say is the first real warrior, the first real, not real warrior, but the first real battle is actually self versus self and versus our own mind that's lying to us all the time. It's telling us things that are not true almost all the time. Being able to notice that and then sort of be like, well, I know that these things aren't true. Like, my heart tells me that this moment is not the love of God, which is why I feel so bad. So my mind is wrong. It's wrong. It doesn't know. It's wrong. We have to be able to accept and notice that, which is hard and it's uncomfortable. And I've recommended a lot, but A Course in Miracles is really probably the best way to just take an actual thing. You don't have to really pay anything other than getting the book, but it really does anchor that perception in. It teaches you that the eyes don't know, And like I said before, when we're observing anything from our dualistic lenses, we're always analyzing it and comparing it, and we're either judging it positively or we're not, or we're judging it in a negative way. But both of them are judgment, and both of them are judging ourselves. So if we judge another person, we say that you're great if you're smart, we're also saying it's good for me to be smart. It's bad for me to be stupid. Which, that might be a way we want to live our life, but when we live our life in dualistic framing, we experience dualistic framing. We experience the sine wave of consciousness and the up and down. In truth, consciousness is just the awareness, or the single point, the singularity of it just rises straight up. That's where our awareness rests. And then we have this spiraling energy around it that provides us experience. Much like a DNA spindle thing, cylinder, whatever those would be called, spiraling DNA, or the helix. That's the word. It's much like that, but there are two energies. There's the divine feminine and divine masculine, and then each one of those has love and light, or divine feminine and divine masculine within it, and that's infinitely so. As weird as that sounds, but the divine masculine would be light and then love, and the feminine would be love and then light. And the balancing of these in themselves, and then the balancing and harmonization together, gives us true sight. But for us to actually become and be it, we have to be able to see properly in the moment, not just later. We have to be able, especially empathic, very sensitive souls, loud noises are too much, people kind of arguing too much, it's just all too much. That's because we are still seeing lots of duality, and we haven't stopped perceiving incorrectly yet. When we perceive correctly, the truth, power, and peace of God just manifests into us, and none of this stuff could matter. They're loud, they're yelling, that one's punching that one in the mouth. Cool. None of this has any power over us, in truth. That's the state we're trying to get to, but the way we get to that state, and it sounds like we don't care. It's not that we don't care. We actually feel all of it, but we're okay with what we're feeling. That's really the only difference. We're okay with the experience. It's not that we don't have sort of a realization that this is not sane, but it's more that we understand not only is this not sane, it's so absurd that it's a little comical that these beings think they're fighting each other. It's a little bit comedic, in fact. That allows us to step back a little bit so that we can analyze more properly and see it more clearly. But we don't want to do that to avoid feelings. We don't want to step away from feelings that are arising. Avoiding feelings is one of the worst things we can really do, because it just gets stuck in us and we get sick. Energy in motion, emotion, has to travel through us. If it doesn't travel through us, it stores into us, which is essentially what we see as obesity, and almost all disease is from that emotional anchoring in instead of releasing. And then there are also beings, of course, that just have larger frames. They come from places that have larger frames, and they are doing that here too. So you can't even discern. So, this is not about judging people's frames or how thin people are or anything. It's just about noticing that all of our pain, sorrow, sickness, disease, all comes from this confused idea that we're separate from God. All of it. When the entire world was freaking out about the pandemic, what are we going to do to prevent myself from getting sick? And I just remember saying to my dad, and I'm like, I don't understand. If you're going to get sick, you're going to get sick. you can take some precautions, but at what point do you just, why don't you just lock yourself in a hole in the basement then? If you're so terrified of getting sick, none of us want to get sick. None of us want to have, and I've had, my grandfather passed away from it, and my grandmother passed away not too long after that. And I didn't really get to visit with them too much because of all of it. Actually, I didn't get to visit with my granddad at all. And so it becomes this understanding that the ego like really pulls us out of good opportunities. Like my granddad probably was going to get that sick and probably it was his time to pass, right? Like I believe that. So probably if the society wasn't so ridiculous, I could have just went to see him, right? So it's hard not to be upset at the society for not letting me go see him. No one wanted to go see him. Like the whole family, it was just, oh, we just can't. What? No, take him out then. They want him locked in. Take him out of there. Fuck him. Right? That's my thought. Bring him to a cabin in the woods and we'll all go see him. What are you talking about? You crazy people. That was my thought. And that thought is not accepted because people are scared. And I understand. I just didn't care. I'll get sick or I won't get sick. It just didn't matter to me. And because I don't have those fears about the body that way. But we have those experiences and then we need to notice that, yeah, that like the ego just does that. That's like what it does. It just is afraid of everything. That's like how it does everything. It's how it inspires almost all of its doing is through fear and control type manipulation, primarily from fear and lack. Also, it's like entirely created by us. So it doesn't actually have any power. It's not actually doing anything. So what we're trying to notice is that the reality that we observe is actually us, ourselves, talking to or teaching ourselves something about ourselves. It doesn't, what we are experiencing doesn't actually truly have anything to do with anyone else, truly. It has to do with us, our relationship with ourselves, and our relationship with God. And that's an annoying kind of truth because we want to like blame them for it. We want them to be at fault. I get it. It would be so much easier if I could just blame everyone else, right? And it is, and that's why we do it. Because we don't realize, we think there are others to blame. We've convinced ourselves that there's other people to blame for our feelings. But there isn't. So it's about noticing a lot of that. I think and so anything that we see and experience that is not likable is the same thing as us saying, I don't like myself. And this is like really confronting to the ego. It's like, no, but I do like myself. But I didn't like that behavior that I saw in the street when there were these two homeless guys fighting. I didn't really like that. It made me feel a bit weird. It made me feel like, oh, maybe the neighborhood's like not very safe, or maybe it felt, I don't know, whatever. That was me noticing like aspects of myself fighting itself and things like that. And like it would mean something different for every person. So we couldn't know. But what I mean is that there are no people fighting. There are no souls fighting each other. Like it's not happening at all. It's literally not happening. And seeing correctly means we know that the ego is not happening. It's not real. The illusion's created so that the ego can do these things. We call it the ego, but wherever we are and however we see these things. The mind does what it wants in the reality that's just below it. So we have this playground and we do what we do. God wants us to do what we want to do. And what we want to do is messed up. So we need to notice it, right? We need to go, oh, yeah, I still am thinking of separateness everywhere. That's why I'm upset with things. Like the soul's calling us to remember there's nothing to be upset about, my dear. I'm right here. We're good. We know who we are. We know what we serve. All is well. But then the person's like, yeah, but look at them and look at this. Look at who? Where? Who? What? What are we looking at? So these aspects are frustrating. You know, a light way to say it. It's frustrating. But it is true. I promise. I promise. Does anyone have any questions or anything they want to add? Any interesting things that seem to be relevant? I think understanding the critical, like most delusional thing that we do here as beings is think that we have like control over stuff. The most recent example I'd like to bring up is there was someone talking about how when they're talking, they want the other person to be quiet and listen. And that when the other person responds and they say, like, this is my experience, and they start to talk about themselves. So it's like person A talks about themselves and their experience, and then person B talks about themselves and their experience. Person A was saying that that's not correct. Person B is supposed to just hear me. And like, it's such a weird backwardness in the society. Person B is saying, I understand you. I have had a relatable experience. Look how similar we are. Blah, blah, blah. That's what's happening. I'm resonating with you. I had that too. Oh, aren't we the same? And then the insecurity in person A is saying, they're not even listening. Oh, they didn't ask me even any questions. Oh my gosh. Oh, it's bananas, right? Like it's just insecurity. Now, of course, there's times to hold space and times to just keep our mouth shut, of course. I'm not, I'm just saying that like the way that this was all framed at that time. So a lot of our social dynamics are like absolute ass backwards. We don't know really how to engage with each other in healthy ways right now. We just don't. We're trying. We're all trying. We're trying. We're doing our best. But most of us don't totally get it. We don't totally get that what other people say, like what another person says, is entirely and completely irrelevant to anything that I believe about myself and what I'm doing. What I think of myself and my relationship with my love and the Creator, that's all that truly matters to anything about me. And whatever anyone's saying is like not relevant to that. And that's the truth, right? I think we all know that. We know that. And we want that to be the case. But we still are disturbed by people. So we want to be like okay with either way. We want to be happy that, isn't it interesting? I try to just be like, isn't it interesting that this person said this and they upset me? Because I like to pride myself, I guess, to my own detriment probably, pride myself in my ability to maintain peace. And I can't all the time. And then I get upset about it and I do this little game with myself about how much peace can I hold. And it's almost like I'm literally manifesting, and this is probably what's actually happening. I'm manifesting experiences to challenge my peace, to see how my peace is. And then I'm talking about it with myself and interacting with myself about it. Luckily, I'm not at a place where I'm blaming people for disturbing my peace, but I'm still playing this weird game of testing myself. And we can't really totally see our actual plan of what we're doing until we stop judging like what is now. Until we like, while we're judging what is right now, we're deciding that we know that what is right now is bad or not good. Like we're judging it. So what is now is not great. And if that's the case, then that's how we'll feel. So why do we think that? At the root of it, it's because we think we're separate from God. So we're trying to correct our perception to say, none of these people are what I think they are. None of these sites are what I think they are. This room isn't what I think it is. This body isn't what I think it is. These thoughts aren't what I think they are. We have to notice we're nuts. A little bit. Quite a lot. In varying degrees, and it's very normal. And that's what we are doing, is correcting that. We're not fighting with these people that say strange, angry things. There is, okay. We can just go, isn't that funny, insane, weird thing they just said just kind of comical at the end of the day? You know, instead of worrying like, oh, others might believe them. Yeah, I mean, silly people believe silly things, and all the silly people get together and say silly things together. You know, it's what people do. I mean, it's okay. But silliness is silly. So, or insanity is insane. Like I said earlier, it's okay. It's just, it is what it is. Sarah says, thank you for watching, everyone, by the way. I really appreciate your time. Very grateful. Sarah says, noticed a while ago I started feeling a lot of resistance to labeling myself as anything. See it a lot in people's social edits, bios. Everything they identify as isn't really them. Yes. Was thinking a lot yesterday about genuine presence during conversation and how precious and difficult it can be for 100% focused on that person in the moment. We are starved of real love. Yeah, we are. We're starved of real loving presence. Yes, we are. Because we don't understand what we're doing. We're not realizing that we are speaking with a God in the other, and we're not exalting them to their true status. So that makes us feel like different things, like totally in little things, but like we maybe aren't super interested in what they're saying. It's because we can't see the divinity properly in that moment. Maybe they're saying something disgusting even. And so divinity is like hidden. It's very hidden. If they're being very racist, right? They're being very hateful. It's hard to see the Christ in them when they're like talking about murdering someone, or, you know, that's a challenging situation. But the truth of the matter is that we can't see it right then. And that's probably because we are judging a being that doesn't understand what it's doing. And yeah, it's really funny you brought up the bio. That's why I call myself a wizard, is because it means just one who doesn't know. Like one who knows they don't know. That's what it means, wise one. Beyond wisdom, like you know that you don't know, so that's what opens you to more proper knowing. So it's like this weird paradox and kind of a joke. And even then, on like, I think on my bio it just says I'm a dove of morning stars. What does that even mean? And to me it just means I'm a simple bird. I'm a bird and a messenger of the sun. I say what I feel I'm called to say, and then people call me whatever they want, you know? Oh, Wizard's here again. Hello, hello, hello. But yeah, like the words we call ourselves are just things we're deciding we are for then. You know, like as I awakened, I'll say as well that as I awakened, I was like, oh, I'm an empath. Oh, okay. Oh, wait, maybe I'm a starseed. Oh, I'm a light-working starseed empath, HSP, Inf J. Woo! like, or whatever the INFP or whatever the things are, Myers-Briggs, we just keep applying more and more labels to ourselves until we realize none of this actually encompasses anything about me. You know, trying to think which book it was that really made me see that. I think it was The Power of Now. He was like, you know, if you're not a dad, who are you? And I was like, whoa. I was like, I don't even know, bro. I don't even know. But we don't know who we are. We don't get it. That's why it's so confusing. At this layer of consciousness, it's very veiled and weird. And for me, it's very weird because I like both know, but am still in the illusion, seeing wrongly. Like I'm still having these experiences too. I'm still judging people sometimes. I'm still getting upset. I'm still having some of these situations. But the truth that I know doesn't align with the experiences that I'm having. If that makes sense? But I still feel at peace with all of that. That's why I try to talk about it. It's not because I like found some special way and like I'm special, but it's because we can do it. Like we can figure out the tightrope. Oh, it's just Sarah T says, it's interesting to walk the tightrope between our expansive self and being grounded into the limited 3D world where we need clunky language to convey things where labels can be helpful. Yeah, it is, because that's part of the issue, is like we're trying to adopt a language that is not really built for unity as well. Like our language doesn't really facilitate unification. Our language is dualistic in its nature, as opposed to something like Sanskrit that's more intuitive and feeling based. It's more true of itself, by itself. There's a reason that Om is the sound of creation, and it's the Sanskrit word, and it just naturally came about. And then humans were like, no, all that just makes too much sense. We're going to make new language because we want people to think differently. But we all did that together. We all agreed together to use this new language. Most of us were just asleep. Oh yeah, the government says we're going to have a new language. Oh, yippee-yay, oh. You know, like that. And we don't know. But the government doesn't know either. None of them knew. None of them have any idea what they're doing. So it's kind of pointless to like remain really resentful. It's kind of like pointless to be so wrapped up in like who tricked us, and like we all tricked us into all of our tricks. so I'm hoping to like try to help notice that we all are tricky little weirdos with ourselves. All of us. Tricky little conniving things. Until we stop doing that. But for most of our time we are like that. Makes me wonder about transference and how different that would be if we're all open to it. Can you, Sarah, thank you for saying that. Can you elaborate a little bit on what you mean by transference? I'm thinking of energy transfers and the transference. Like, are we talking about psychological transference? Or are we talking about something else? Energetic transference, or more polarity, metaphysical things? Because I'd probably talk about those things differently, depending. But like you said, clunky language. It's shitty language to even navigate this world. Because everything is a conceptual framework of opinion. So when we state anything about anything, we essentially are almost always, not entirely always, but almost always stating an opinion about reality, about something about reality. And we'll generally feel better when we're affirming true, positive goodness in reality. We'll feel more at peace over time as we just keep doing that. However, the ego doesn't like that. So it's weird. It's very strange to me. But the ego doesn't want you to not affirm its fear. So if you're always affirming what's loving and true, and there's someone in your life that really wants to be afraid, they're going to get upset. They're going to get like agitated because you're not acknowledging their fear. It means that they have to energize their own fear instead of feeling energized by you in their fear, if that makes sense. They're wanting you to agree, which helps them to feel that the fear is more true. And you would wonder, like, why would a being even do this? They just don't know. We just don't know. We don't know that we're doing it. We don't notice. We're just unconscious in those moments. But they're trying to empower the fear with your reaction to what they're saying. And what they're saying is nonsense. So you don't want to affirm it. At the same time, depending on our position, we do want to offer compassion. I should do a stream on just like what one day like true compassion looks like what actual real compassion I think looks like and I feel looks like. And I don't think we get compassion properly. I think most of our compassion comes from our judgment of ourselves, and then we put it on someone. And then we say, I'm going to go help them because look how much they're suffering. But they're fine. I think we do that a lot. I think people are fine, and we tell them how broken they are. And the best example I have of this are schizophrenics. Society just tells them they're broken, and then look what happens. Look how bad it gets. It almost always, as it presents, gets worse. And the reason is because the people here have no fucking idea what they're talking about. And so they make the person that's hearing the voices think about how broken they are and continue to perpetuate, I'm broken and this is negative and all bad. When we understand that a psychosis, a psychotic state, or a schizophrenic state, but in a positive and divine, loving truth of God way, is like a great experience, it's the same thing. It's just that the schizophrenic is tuning into a different channel, different frequency. And the people around them are constantly telling them how stupid they are and how annoying they are or freaky they are or whatever it is. So Sarah says, yes, an energetic transference, like a big download exchange. It feels like a huge zip file. Yes. Where I know all these things about this singular concept. If we did that instead of use words, yeah, we will do that one day. One day we will do that more and it will be more clear. But for now, we can't, essentially because we have thumbs. This is funny. Maybe you guys will find this interesting. The only reason that we didn't develop our telepathy and telepathic powers and telekinesis and different things is because we had thumbs. So we started to make tools. Once we made tools, we were like, oh, we can actually make weapons and like take each other's stuff with these weapons. So a lot of other civilizations that were grown from humanoid type situations didn't have thumbs. You'll often see aliens like with like depicted in different ways with like this and stuff. Like they don't have thumbs and things. It was found that creating the thumb leads to war. That's one of the things that we really learned with this logos, is that the thumb makes war. It's an interesting little tidbit, and it makes perfect sense to me. I think they talk about it a little bit in the Law of One. I'm not sure how in depth they go, but you know, it's those little weird things that consciousness and like, you know, it's interesting to consider. Why did our sun decide that we would have thumbs? You know, did they know? Did the sun know that we were going to fight each other? It's weird. It's interesting. But yeah, even that I just said, all of that was just a zip file. Like, I don't even know what I'm talking about. Like, this stuff just flies in. And I have no idea what I'm saying. I mean, Sean, the Sean he's like, is this real? Like, he's literally in the back going, what are you saying? What are you talking about? But yeah, no, it's true. That's what this logos experienced thumbs as creating this, hand-based practical doingness of consciousness, which then created eventual conflict. And so the sun itself, the logos, wasn't aware necessarily that it would go to where it went. It's free will. So it's like, hey, we give you thumbs, and what are you going to do with them? We're going to learn how to make tools and weapons and then hurt each other. What do you have to say about that, God? God's like, all right. I mean, if that's what you guys want to do. Okay. Like that, there is no fatherly judgment of it other than it just seems like you're just fighting a lot of nothing. But okay, sure. Sure, fight. Right? Sarah says, and yes, I feel the tricks on social injustices get boring after a while, like watching the same thing play over, especially when, yeah, it's all a game. Consciousness playing a game with itself. It's like God trying to trick us with us. Like it's God playing tricks on itself, sort of. Sort of. It's not quite accurate, but it is all a trick of light. It is all a trick of light and love, and makes us think a whole bunch of weird stuff's happening. And it's just not. There is evidence of truth, facts, right? Like this happened. I just clapped, right? No, I didn't. Nothing happened. Nothing occurred. There was no movement at all. But there was an observation of a layer of consciousness that seemed to move and seemed to clap and seemed to be doing whatever we're watching it do. But that stuff isn't real. And it's kind of... But it is true. That is the truth. So if it isn't real, then why are we upset? It felt pretty real. It felt real. It felt real. 8-year-old girl with a beard. That's me. That's me, brother. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, that's me. Maybe that's you. Sarah says, oh, wow, that's so interesting about the thumbs. I've actually said we think we are entitled to rule the world and more advanced than bees because we have opposable thumbs and big brains. I had no idea. Yeah, actually, dolphins, for example, are very conscious, very aware, very awake. Not much different than humans. They just don't have thumbs. So, we see them as animals, but they're not. They're not really that much different than humans. They're in like a tribal kind of place with their consciousness, but it's third density, pretty much, consciousness, and dolphins and whales as well. Lots of them. And they are not they're not animals the way we think anymore. Maybe they were, but now they're not. And we just sort of assume that if the dolphins were intelligent, they would like build technologies or like cities or something. Like they would somehow be anthropomorphic. Like we put man or woman, but we put human into everything we observe and say, well, if they were smart like us. No, that's nuts. There are like blobs of goo in the universe that are just blobs of goo, and they're just like these weird loving blobs of goo. They just do whatever they're doing. It's weird. And they're smarter than us. They're just blobs of goo. It's funny. I apologize, but it's funny. It's funny to think about where humans feel we are, and then the truth of it, the truth of the matter, is that we are, almost all of us, totally blind and ignorant of what's actually happening. And my teacher really, he said, he not is doesn't have a gender, but my master said, um, there is no observation of the planetary drama. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, so if the Earth blows itself up, he just said, consciousness will continue. As if it's irrelevant. Irrelevant if the Earth explodes. And I'm like, or just burns itself up or whatever happens. I was just sort of like, okay. These understandings that he's offering me are that none of this has any relevance to anything other than our seeking of God, which is weird. It seems like we're involved in a lot of different things. It seems like there's lots of stuff going on and lots of different systems and political things, and right, there's lots of stuff going on. And yeah, bees. Bees are my favorite. They're like my favorite little things. I see bees all over the place. Wasps though. Wasps creep me out. I don't know about you guys. But they follow me. They're all over me. They don't sting me, they don't hurt me. But they just like walk on me. They're just all over my business. And I know it's because they're like wondering what this is. Because they can sense the peace of the Father is what they sense. The peace of the Father or the peace of the Mother. They sense that in other beings. And then they come to you to like check out what you are. Like wasps, bugs, birds, squirrels, I bet skunks, raccoons, foxes. And I do not live in the forest. I am not a forest dweller. Like this is in like the city. They're coming to me to like check me out. And this isn't about Sean. This is about you guys, because you'll notice the same things. And humans will do the same thing, but humans are very opinionated about things. We're all very opinionated about everything. So it's really wise to start to try to see more truly, which is seeing outside of opinion, seeing outside of that. Yes, wasps, independence in action, exactly. Wasps do what they want, and if you get in their way, they hurt you, right? They do what they need to do for themselves to serve the whole, also. Like they're a collective being, but also an individual being in that way. Like they're nuts. Wasps are nuts. They're nuts. They'll do anything. They're nuts. But they're loyal to each other. And if you crush a wasp nest, the whole hive might attack you until you die, right? They might try to kill you as a collective hive mind. Like wasps are very interesting beings that way. But even just to see that like a wasp has a certain nature and humans have a certain nature and we all have a certain nature, and we've made our nature like to sleep. Our nature has been to be sort of docile and unconscious. And we're learning not to be that way, but part of that is like noticing that like it's fine. It's okay. We're all a little crazy. We can't see reality properly. We just can't. Until we do, using the techniques that we're talking about in the video. Sean E says, Sean, what separates to you the importance of social issues like injustice from things like tricks of manipulation to instill fear by whoever's in power? Though power is of God. Social systems do not have power. They claim power. They claim power, and then we give it to them by agreeing with them. So there isn't really like a separation of like we can see that this social system or this thing is trying to manipulate and cause fear, but when we notice it, like it just doesn't, it's not effective. The best example is when Jesus and was put in front of Pilate and was told, he told Pilate, like, you don't have power over me. You're, you know, you just don't. You are the emperor, ruler, whatever the thing was, governor, whatever it was. But you are that person of sure. But you don't actually hold power. You're just pretending a game. So it depends, because usually we have areas in the society that we want to aid in. Like for me, it's spirituality. I think a lot of spiritual teachers are very confused, and I want to help. I don't want to disparage them. I don't want to gossip about them. I specifically don't say anybody's names. I don't try to point, but I see an issue. So I'm talking about it a little bit, but not trying to point at problems, trying to point at what I see as the truth, affirming what is real and true, instead of fighting against something that isn't true. And that's, I think, where we find peace in our fight or our justice, our virtues, is we know what is true and good. So we follow that instead of focusing on what others say, which isn't true or good. If they're saying something insane, it's crazy. At some point, we have to say, well, some people will listen to them and some people won't. I trust that like God's going to bring themselves, like the light is going to shine here. Like if this is really crazy, hurtful stuff, then, maybe I just need to trust that all of it's going to be okay as well. E says, the reason I ask is we all seem to get worked up by being manipulated by the powers that be. Well, that's because we think we can be manipulated. There is no power that be, right? That's not real. Is the real core of it. That's annoying. So don't get me wrong, but the government that says it has control over you does not have control over you. It doesn't. It claims it, and you agree or you don't. And the mind will cite all the reasons it has control. The mind is insane. There is no control over you other than what you ascribe control to. Like what you give power to has power over you, of course. So to find peace with feeling oppressed is noticing the do not oppress. Viktor Frankl wrote, like, to lighten, like to be light is to endure burning. Like we have oppositions to our being, and we need to learn that they don't actually have a relevance to it. The divinity and sovereignty we are, the God self we are, that is what's true. Whatever some human says or does or slaps our wrist or kills us over, even crucifies us over, is an illusion. The power is here within, and they can kill me over it if they want to. And when we have that confidence, that peace about that, there is no such thing as like another manipulating me. Either I agreed with what they said or I didn't. If I agreed with them and I went with their way, then I'm responsible for what I participated in. Even though I was manipulated and confused, I chose to be. Like it's more about, I think personally, personal responsibility. Like I chose this. I did, because I am a sovereign being. I did choose it. I don't like it now. That makes me sad, makes me upset. Can't really blame them for my ignorance. I'm ignorant. I'm the one. That helps me to put it on me so I can heal it and forgive myself and let it all go, and then I feel much better. That was a great question. Thank you, E. I really appreciate that. And thank you, everyone, for your time and attention. I think it's an hour and 16 minutes. I think it's good time. Ah, you beautiful people, beautiful souls. Thank you so much. I am totally honored. Really appreciate you. Thank you as well to people who've donated and different things like that. There's a link in the description if you're interested in doing that to contribute. You guys make everything possible, so I'm very appreciative and very grateful. Thank you so much. All the blessings. Soli Deo Gloria.